I want to start by not only welcoming you all here, but thank you all for taking time out of your work and your lives to be here. And most of all, the thank you for the work that you're all doing. It's so important. And I hope that you can use this time together as a time not only to share your great successes, but to really grapple with whatever is challenging you most in the work that you're doing. This is a space where we can do that. I know from talking with many of you and from doing this work that you are often in spaces where you feel like you literally have to justify your existence as an entity, as a work. This is not that place. With a few perhaps exceptions, and we can consider them sounding boards for future outreach. Everyone here understands not only the importance of this work, but how essential it is. So let's use this time together to re-energize and to get great ideas and to really figure out what we need to do to take this to the next level. In that vein, I just wanted to point out that we're here to support you here at Georgetown at the Center for Innovations and Community Safety. By the way, we are co-hosting this, of course, with the Policing Project, our great friends in New York. So we're very pleased to be here with them as well. They've got a number of people here as well. I don't know their names, so perhaps Barry can shout them out. But I want to shout out the people from our team. Some of them are down at the front desk, but raise your hands over here on the sides. These are all people who know everything about Georgetown and they can help you. We have Lisa on the end, Anya, Dylan, Lucia, Cassandra, and Declan. They would be more than happy to help you. Most of them don't work on this part of the work that the center does, but they're all pitching in for the next 2 days to make sure that this convening is a good one and that you all have what you need. So please do take advantage of them, and they are amazing. Lastly, I just want to really thank Tahir Duckett and Freya Rigterink. Really, none of this would have happened without them. When Tahir came on over almost 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago now, one of the first things he said was, I want to do something like this. I want to have a convening for all the people who are doing this kind of outreach, this kind of alternative first responder work. And as someone said last night, I think it was someone from Pat Atlanta, Tahir is one of those people who doesn't just talk about great ideas, he makes them happen. And he certainly made this idea happen and brought it to life along with Freya. Of course, with the support of the entire policing project and all of KICS, but really without those two individuals, none of this would be happening. So everything that goes right about the next 2 days is because of them. And everything that doesn't go quite right is because I didn't pitch in well enough, seriously. So with that, I'm going to turn it over. And again, just thank you all for being here. And I'm looking forward to a really great next couple of days.
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, I'm from the South, so I like a little call and response. My name is Tahir Duckett. I am the Executive Director at the Center for Innovations and Community Safety here at Georgetown Law. We will all just call it KICS for the next couple of days. And so before we get started, I want to just take a moment to thank the truly incredible people who have put this together. As a lawyer, I have to say that I'm legally obligated to promise that I will not be able to name everyone who has been critical to this effort, but I will name a few. I want to start with Lucia Mock and Alyssa Hidari, who have been on point for all of the tireless day-to-day work on this conference for months. Thank you. To Rita Gonzalez, who has provided support since day one, and of course to Freya, the Executive Director at the Policing Project, who has been a really incredibly smart, kind, thoughtful, collaborative partner on this since this conference was but a twinkle in our eyes. Thanks also to our faculty directors, Barry Friedman at the Policing Project, to Christy Lopez, and to Rosa Brooks here at KICS. I also want to thank our co-host alternative response programs, Albuquerque Community Safety, Atlanta Policing Alternatives and Diversion, Dayton Mediation Response Unit, Denver Public Safety, City of San Francisco, City of Tucson. We tried to do something different here. We didn't want to just sit in a room and decide what practitioners needed. We wanted to build this in collaboration with people who already knew what they needed. So if you hate this conference, now you know who to blame. No, I'm kidding. You blame me. Ignore Christy. And finally, to our sponsors, the National Football League and the Players Coalition, Microsoft's Justice Reform Initiative, the Pritzker Pucker Family Foundation, Stand Together Trust, the Just Trust, the Joyce Foundation, Charles and Lynn Schusterman Family Philanthropies, Arnold Ventures, and the Pew Charitable Trusts. This work doesn't happen if it's not funded, right? Whether that is convenings like ours, whether that is the work that is happening on the ground, none of it is free. And so we are deeply grateful to the folks who can partner with us to make this work. I believe that we are on the precipice of something truly special. That this convening is one in a long string of milestones in recent years in the development of a new way that we think about caring for each other. The work that the people in this room are attempting to imagine, to build, to put into practice is no small thing. It's not tinkering on the edges. It's not rearranging the deck chairs. It's the bold recognition that we need to build new systems of care and that we can build new systems of care. Because that's what we're talking about here. Every time I hear about the innovative work being done in cities in every corner of the nation, I'm hearing about folks with the courage to imagine and create systems that aren't based on coercion or control or the convenience of ignoring people who are in need, but who are instead focused on envisioning ecosystems of care. They're focused on healing, on treatment, on prevention. And that's a sea change in terms of how we treat those that we've pushed to the margins in our society. But this room is itself its own kind of sea change. This convening, a very first of its kind, all of you here representing dozens of cities from across the country, urban, suburban, rural, building these systems. And we thought we'd have plenty of space here when we started. It turns out we could have filled this room 5 times over. There is so much demand and so much work happening out in the country. And that's a radical departure from the nature of the conversation that we were having 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And that's why this feels like the right moment for this convening, for this particular milestone. Because in addition to the beautiful vision that we have for these healthier systems of care in our cities, we do also face deep challenges in making it work. Some of these challenges are foundational. Even the most well-meaning programs can perpetuate systems of oppression. How do we build programs that aren't rooted in the same old systems of white supremacy, of ableism, of economic inequality? How do we build systems and programs that don't ask for trust from community members, but simply earn it? There are less daunting questions as well, right? What data should we be collecting? These are still challenging questions. And so we start this morning by embracing the breadth of what's possible as we rebuild these systems. Later this morning in our first problem-solving session, we'll take a moment to root ourselves in the values that we'll use to inform our answers to these tough questions. We'll grapple with the difficulty of getting a program off the ground, as well as how to think about the risk involved in responding to different types of calls. We'll think about trust and impact and recruitment and workforce development. We're all here because we share this compelling vision, but we're also all charged with making it work. Because if it doesn't work, there are plenty of people who will say that what we have now is just the best that we can do, that we can't hope to help somebody like Jordan Neely, so we have to instead rely on violence to control him. It's that cynicism that's the real enemy of what we are hoping to do. And so as we struggle together to overcome these very real, very tough, very difficult, complex challenges, know that you've already done the hardest part. You've envisioned something better, and you've actually started to put that into practice. You've pushed us across this critical threshold. The challenge before us is no longer if we should do this, it's a question of how we do it. And we quite obviously won't solve all of these challenges over the next 48 hours. But I do believe that the connections made and the relationships developed here will make fertile ground for the next round of innovations to sprout and grow. And here at KICS, we're dedicating ourselves to tending that soil, to helping you cultivate the ecosystems of care that we so desperately need. And so now I'd like to welcome back, as it turns out, to Georgetown Law, Barry Friedman, who graduated from here magna cum laude. He's the faculty director at NYU's Policing Project and the Jacob D. Fuchsberg Professor of Law and affiliated professor of politics at NYU Law. Please join me in welcoming Barry.
Tahir earned what's about to happen, I just want to say, which is he's not the only Georgetown Law graduate here in the room today, and he's not the only Magna Georgetown graduate. I'm not the only Magna graduate in the room today because Tahir is also. We just learned that about ourselves. Also, I have a daughter named Samara, and he has a young infant named Imara, so we have a great deal in common. What we don't have in common is that I'm not going to be as eloquent as he just was, so I hope you will forgive me. And I've told a few of you, and I think this may well be true, which is what you might actually see me do at some point in the next 2 days is cry. So if you do, I'm given to doing that. It is amazing seeing you all here. So good morning. I did not know that I was going to have to name all the people at the Policing Project who have been working so hard on this. So I'm going to do this, but we've got this lawyer rule that, if you have a list and then you leave something out, it wasn't supposed to be there, but that's not the rule for this. If I leave somebody out, I'm embarrassed, and I want to thank them anyway. So Alyssa Haydari, who worked tirelessly and is amusing to me because Alyssa is the wife of our former executive director, Farhang Haydari, and this is our first time working together, but I know she's killed herself. Then I'm going to run down the list. So Rita, just raise your hands, all of you. Rita and Nicole and Katie Kinsey and Katie Camp and Alex Heaton and Evan Douglas and Markiana, Taisha Dixon, Freya, of course, I'm going to come back to Freya in a minute. I think that's everybody. So thank you for your hard work. I appreciate you all applauding my saying a list that long. I do want to stop and thank Freya and Christy and Tahir. Christy and I have been friends and sparring partners for a very long time. Look to me like you might be a little weepy up here too, so I understand that. Christy has devoted her life to this work in really remarkable ways. Tahir and Freya have disappeared from all of our lives for the last 2 months. They have worked tirelessly to get you all here. And so welcome, welcome, and thank you so much to the two of them. I am not going to be as eloquent as Tahir, but I want to tell kind of a personal story about how I ended up in this room, which I think may end by explaining how you all ended up in this room. And that's just going to lead us right into the first panel. So we started the Policing Project about 8 years ago, and the mission of the Policing Project at that time was to bring democratic accountability to policing. And it still is, but things have shifted as the world has shifted. And so this is a little bit of an embarrassing story about me, but when I published a book about policing, I teach about the law of policing, and I went out to do the work. I had never actually met a police officer, I don't think, other than one that arrested me when I was younger, but it was all handled fine. A few parking tickets along the way. And that's what we academics do. We read things and we write things. But then I got out into the world and I realized that things were not how I imagined them to be in two particular ways. So I spent a lot of time riding around in police cars, in police command headquarters, and in communities impacted by policing. And here's the two things I learned. The first was the police, particularly progressive police, and I want to make clear that many of my dear, dear friends are police, even though I think the institution itself is troubled in many ways, rather say that they're involved in public safety than in law enforcement. That's their preference. But I came to understand that their view of public safety was very different than the view in the communities that were being policed. Police felt that public safety was keeping people free from harm in public from third parties. And communities thought public safety involved housing and food and jobs and services. And of course, freedom from third-party violence. The second thing I learned though, which relates, and for me ended up being even more profound, is, and relates to the idea that the police thought that their job was to provide safety from third-party violence, was, I rode around police cars and I had this notion, because politicians tell us all the time that police spend their time fighting crime, and they're very brave, and those things are true, but very small amount of their time is actually fighting crime in any way. And most of what I saw them doing was, somebody on a bicycle hit by a car, or a neighbor fighting because they're angry about a party or a barking dog, or somebody in the middle of the street clearly in mental health distress. And incident after incident after incident. And I started to think, this is just bizarre. Like, why are we sending the police to deal with these problems? And because I'm a nerd, I wrote an article, and just brace yourself for this sexy title, Disaggregating the Policing Function. I'm going to do better on the next one. But what I meant was, like, take it apart. Look at what the police do all day long, and then find people who actually know how to solve those problems. Because by sending the police, we're not solving the problems of people in need. And often because all the police are trained to do largely is use force and exercise the power of law enforcement. That's what we were getting. And it didn't make any sense. So I wrote this article saying, take it all apart. And I started to read about alternative response. And then I decided not to make the same life mistake twice, which is not just read about alternative response, but actually go try to talk to the people and see what happens and learn from them. And you all are amazing. And one of the things that you told us so often was, we live in silos in our communities doing this work. And it's exciting, but it's challenging and it's hard. And we would love to talk to other people who are doing this work. And we heard it over and over and over again. So here you are. You are here to talk to each other, and I'm about to stop talking, and we're going to get out of your way, I hope, for the next 2 days. There is one other thing, though, that I very much want to say, which is going to bring us into the first panel, which is, so we're planning a convening. What do? You send emails and get on the phone and think, who should be our keynote speaker, right? You want somebody with national prominence, who's leader of the movement, who's going to be a draw. Turns out we didn't have a draw problem, because Tahir is right. We've had people calling and asking to come, and we ran out of space. But as we thought about who that person is, we realized there isn't one. This is not that kind of movement. This is a movement that is happening organically from the ground up in place after place after place in the United States. You are putting it together with, baling wire and tape and goodness knows what else. And I've been in some of those cars, so I know we need to get y'all some better equipment. We'll start right there. But we decided this is a convening that really needed to start from the ground up. And so this first panel, I'm going to invite the panelists up, are folks who are actually doing this work, and we're going to start to talk about it. Thank you for being here.